2 Country Radio.
Find us on Facebook and Twitter. We play more music every hour, every day. 2 Country Radio. Turn on, tune in.
What's your London highlight so far? You've been here a few days now.
Man, we went to I was depending on Yelp. I don't know if you know what Yelp is. It's like kind of you can research like restaurants. They'll tell you what places are close by. So we were depending on that last night, and we had this place. This was highly rated, called the Blind Pig. Well, we go there, and it's like you can't get into it. You have to have a reservation, and it's real upscale. And we were kind of bummed out, and because then of course you can't get in. You really want to see what all the hype's about. And I guess the door guy felt sorry for us, so he was like, "Hey, if you just go down the street, wait like 30 minutes, you come back and I'll get you in." He goes, "It'll probably be standing room only, but I can get you in." And we were like, okay. So we were like little kids. Like we went down the street, had a couple glasses of wine, came back, and we were like, what is this place going to be? It was really cool, but it was just a bar. But like, the walking up the stairs, I thought I was about to like see Prince Charles.
So is that Adele's hangout? Because I know you were trying to find Adele's hangout.
I wanted to go, I just figured like she had to like, there has to be some place random, like we call them in the States like dive bar, like just a dumpy little place that no one would ever expect you to go that you love. And we were like in the thick of it downtown, and I was like, I want to go to one of these neighborhoods and like find like a local place where it's just all locals.
There's plenty of that in London. There is plenty of that in London. You recently become a father.
I did.
Yeah. What's it like being back on the road?
It's tough. I was just like, before you got in here, I was FaceTiming my wife, and she was playing with my daughter, and it's you feel a little guilty, because you're gone and you're getting sleep, for the most part 8 hours a night, and she's getting up every 4 hours. But it's we worked and waited a long time to have kids, and it was extremely difficult for us, and so it's extremely rewarding. And I was home for about the first 2.5 months, and really CRS that you referenced earlier was kind of our first thing, that was even remotely work related that we did. And I can remember the morning before one of the events I did, I looked at her and I said, it's real life starts now. Like, I got to go back to work. And we both kind of were like, what in the hell are we going to do? But, we first couple of days were a little difficult, but we kind of have a formula now that kind of works. So, the biggest thing for me is you just hope that you're not gone so long that they kind of forget who you are or forget what you look like. And then you got to, every time you come back home, you reestablish that bond. So I really, we were home for 2 days. I really tried to spend as much time with them in front of their faces just so they could kind of get used to you. Yeah. Hey, thankfully there's no other, I think with the exception of my father-in-law, there's not been any men at the house. Hopefully. Better not be.
Have you been given any good advice from other artists that have kind of done the same thing?
No, I mean, it's funny, everybody has their own philosophies and their own ideas, and it seems like nothing works. That first couple of weeks, you just try anything to get them to quit crying.
Especially because you've got two.
Yeah, it's
even harder.
So there's really not ever a moment where one of them is not freaking out. And I can remember I had about a 45-minute window. I think they were 2 weeks old, to go run like 2 or 3 errands and pick up dinner for the night. And I was just like, you learn that like time is of essence. Like you have 40 minutes, that's it. And so I got the first 3 things done. I went to pick up dinner at this. I noticed you have one here, it's Whole Foods, and they have like, it's kind of buffet style, and you make your stuff, and then you take it. You can eat it there, but we're gonna take it home. And I was fixing my dish, and I mean, I was like possessed. Like, get out of my way. It's like right around Christmas, you know, like, so the place is packed. And I'm like, get out of my way. I need to get in and get out. Right at 5 o'clock. And I hear this voice say, Mr. Nail. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Who's gonna bother me at this moment? And I look up at Sturks Bentley, and he's like, you got 3-month-olds, don't you? And I went, 3-month-olds? Are you me? They're 2 weeks old, and they're everywhere. And I look down, and he's like holding his child who's small, and I've just cursed twice in the front of him in the store. And then he said something else, and it went completely in one ear and out the other. And I literally got home and looked at my wife and I said, man, I just saw Dirks. I couldn't remember anything we talked about. He said something about we had 3-month-olds, and I'm pretty sure I cursed in front of his kid. She was like, you need to text him immediately and tell him that you're sorry. He probably thinks you're a freak. And so I texted him later, and I just said, hey, man, I'm sorry I was out of it, dude. Like, I honestly don't even remember what we talked about because it was just so, my mind was in a million different places. So I remember him saying something about it gets better at like 6 months, and I'm like, and I'd heard like 3 or 4 people that day say it gets better at 4 months. So I'm like, well, does it ever really get better? Because every time it keeps getting further and further away from birth. So I was like, yeah, like 18 years old, it finally gets better, yeah, when they leave.
First time playing the UK, David. Are you excited?
I'm starting to get like really nervous because everybody, you know, it's like it's like your wedding day. This is going to be a terrible analogy, but I'm going to try to make it work. Say your wedding day, you like talk about it. And it's like, you know, 9 months out. And so you talk about it for forever, and it's finally just kind of almost becomes something you talk about, but you don't think it's ever going to actually get here. And then, you know, 2 days before, you're like, holy crap, like, I'm actually getting married. This is real. You know, this is something we've been talking about doing for a couple years. And I always say they caught me on a good day because I'm terrified to fly. So they must have something must have really good happened one day, and they called me and asked me if I would do it because I said that I would fly over here, which is the longest flight, furthest I've ever been away from home. And but it was one of those things where you just kind of started talking about it, and you just didn't really think it was ever really real.
Yeah.
And then you look at your schedule, and you're like, oh, well, on Tuesday I'm going to London. Oh, wow, I did not know that was actually happening. I thought that was like fake. And then you get here, and it's just, you know, all anybody's talking about. You're talking about it all day for 2 days, and so it's like you've suppressed your nerves. You've been nervous from the whole time or whatever, and anxious and excited. You suppress all that, and then all of a sudden it's like you're on the eve of it. So I'm freaking out a little bit,
yeah.
But it's kind of like motivated me. Like I've been thinking about like set lists and different things, just like, you know, wanting to do something special.
Yeah. Well, it's a big deal for us, for sure.
Well, I would say so. I mean, it's all I've heard is biggest ever every time anybody talks about it. So I think anytime you reference something as the biggest ever every time, it must be a big deal.
Yeah, C2C is for a country fan in the UK, it's the thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the crazy thing is that tickets will start going on sale the moment it finishes on the Sunday night for the following year. No lineup, but they'll sell out.
That's crazy.
That's how much we want it. That's how much we love it. So we appreciate you guys coming over. We really, really do.
Oh, it's going to be fun, man. It's, you know, I've had, I don't know what they mean by this, but I've had people for years say, you know what, man, you should go to Europe. And I really think they'd like what you do.
Oh, you haven't experienced it yet.
I'm like, what does that mean? You know, like you're telling me I need to move to another country. But so like it's, you know, again, something you talk about, and you just kind of, you know, think it's fake. You know, obviously never having been here, you know, I wasn't actually completely sure that the place was real. until I landed. And
Just
I
in
was
films
like,
and the Beatles.
yeah, I thought, I didn't know if the Beatles actually really came from here or if it was just like some fake place and they had this accent. And no, it was, but it is wild. I mean, I grew up in a super duper small town in southeast Missouri, and people where I grew up, man, they don't go to. Well, I never went to the beach as a kid, so to think that I'm here now, it's really cool because I remember sitting at the airport in Philadelphia before we flew over, and I was texting a few of my friends, and it's like, who didn't know? They're like, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" Well, I don't know about you, but I'm going to Europe, And they're like, "Hey, I'm gonna go to the lake, or I'm gonna go, to Jonesboro, Arkansas, which is like an hour away to go to a mall, and I'm like the jerk who's rubbing it in that I'm going to London." So it's pretty wild, but again, it's one of those things. A wise person told me when I first started this, because I would just get so worked up for shows, and he said, "Man," he goes, "hope that you always get this worked up." And I was like, "Why? This is awful. It's miserable." And he goes, "Man, if you're not nervous, you're not ready." And I was like, "What the hell does that mean?" And he goes, "Just think about it." He goes, "You're nervous because you care about it.
Yeah.
And if you weren't nervous, then you're going to go out there and you're just going to half-ass it, and everybody's going to know it." And I'm like, geez. So there'll be times like before a show where, especially now with kids, we've only had like 5 or 6 since they've been born. But you're just constantly texting and communicating with your wife, like right up till show. And every show I'll have to stop myself and be like, "Dude, you're about to have to work. You better get your mind right." And, and then you just suddenly, just like, I can't explain it. It's just like something goes over your body, and you just get like that first time all over again, and you have to take an extra shot of Jack Daniels to settle down.
Well, I'm pretty certain that by the time you've finished with C2C, you'll know what that European experience is all about.
Well, I'm fired up about it. It's there's certain goals that I think you have as a artist, and I've never really had many. There's things I wanted to do, but there weren't like specific numbers that I wanted to attain, or obviously everybody wants to play in the States, Madison Square Garden, but I can remember just being able to say you played the Grand Ole Opry, being Grammy nominated, doing Letterman, doing Leno. There's just certain things like that when you talk about them or you mention it, it's just kind of wow moments, and so now to say, yeah, and we went to Europe, we've played in Europe, I mean, that's an amazing thing to put on your resume. So I always tell people that I try to treat every experience and every show, and sometimes my mornings are really tough after this philosophy, but I try to live every day to the max. And I wish I'd have had a video on me last night, just like running around the city, just trying to experience everything, trying to go into every place, walk every street, just wanting to, like I could experience it all in a night. I was trying.
Soak it up. Let's talk about new album, because I read that you weren't actually planning on putting a new album together. So what happened?
Last year, I guess it's the year before that, so 2 years ago, we worked more than we had ever worked before. I think we had like 160 full band shows, and you probably throw in another 25 radio shows, and then just the travel to and from those. We were gone well over 200 days a year, and I remember texting my manager, at the start of December, and just saying, I can never do this again. We could never do this again. It was the closest I'd come to complete and total burnout. I mean, I was worried every night that I wasn't going to get that goosebump feeling on stage, because I was just so tired. And so I told them we were going to take a couple months off to start the year. And so we did. And I guess about midway through January, I noticed that songwriting appointments started showing up on my calendar. And I can remember thinking, like, this is not exactly taking off. But for whatever reason, like, I just kind of went with it. And that first week that I had 2 appointments, I wrote Fighter, which is the title track of the record, and a song called Home, which is probably my favorite song on the record. And it just literally erased, like, all of the negativity away. And, like, it was like in a week I recharged my batteries. And I went into, like, creative mode. So I was just wanting to write as much as possible. And, you know, like, when you write a song, I think for any artist, like, there's only so many times you can listen to a piece of crap, you know, iPhone guitar vocal. You know, like, you just start imagining, like, okay, I wonder what this would sound like, or would, you know, where would you put this guitar, where, you know, will it have bass, or where would the drums come in, you know, just all these hypotheticals. And so finally one day I just asked my producer, I said, look, hey, can we just go in on our own dime and record a couple of these songs just to kind of see, you know, what comes of it. And, you know, obviously if the record label likes them later on, you know, we can make them a part of the record and stuff. And he was like, yeah, sure. And I think that secret lasted about a week. And all of a sudden I started getting all these emails of demos. And I went from getting like 2 to 3 a day to like 20 a day. And I'm like, why am I getting all these demos? And I called one of my really good friends as a publisher in town, and I said, man, dude, if you send me one more song, we're going to not be friends anymore. And he's like, dude, you're getting ready to make a record. I'm like, who told you that? I ain't getting ready to make no record. He's like, man, I talked to somebody over the label, and they said you were listening to songs. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And so when they just kind of the record label looked at it as, hey, you know, why limit yourself to 2 songs? You know, find 4 songs, find 5 songs. You know, if you find as many songs as you want. If you find enough to make a record, make a record. And I was just kind of like, okay. Like, we really hadn't discussed this at all. This seems very rushed, without much planning. But, like, the kind of, I guess, rebellious side of me was like, okay, well, I'll do it. And the competitive side of me was like, yeah, I'm going to go find, you know, a better song than this song. And then I'm going to find a better song than this song. And I think the 3rd song we found was Nights on Fire. And that's when we kind of just went into overdrive, because we were like, okay, we've got a hit that we know is a hit. Like, now we can really have fun, you know, because it just seems like whenever you find that first one, it gives you a little confidence and a little freedom that, you know, you can take some chances and stuff in other areas. And we just, you know, we cut, I guess, 4 or 5 songs, and I think it was like 14 days later went in and finished it. I'd never made a record that fast, but it was the most fun. I mean, it was really stressful. It was really hectic. But like I said, like, you just kind of get caught up into it, and it's like you're scared to stop because you're afraid that all the momentum's going to stop. So you're just kind of riding the wave and hoping that you're making good decisions along the way.
Yeah. Talking about getting demos, how do you choose?
I have a philosophy that the 12, 13 best songs win. And it doesn't mean, that means if, you know, I don't write any of them, then I don't write any of them. And so it's like you have a kind of a board in your mind, you know, and you got this best song in your opinion and so on. And, you know, as you continue to get songs, as you continue to write songs, those songs may come off the board. They may move up the board, down the board. And, but I was fortunate with this record because it was really like, it was like putting a puzzle together. It seemed like every song kind of had a purpose and fit. And so when you had, it was like we had like 4 or 5 big pieces. It was kind of like, okay, well, we know we need this, and we need that, and we need this. And it just so happened they were really good songs. And, you know, you may get 4 or 5 songs that are like all really, really good. And then you have to just go, you know, is there one that just has a little extra something special? And you know, but most of the time it's just a gut instinct, you know. Man, damn, this song's better than mine. Damn it, I gotta cut this. Dang, gummit, you know. I think I started out with 6 or 7 songs on the record, and I ended up with 5. So, you know, you just constantly hearing songs, and that's really the toughest part. Is eventually you just have to say, I can't listen anymore.
Yeah.
These are the songs we're going in to record, because like now, having been a year since we made the record, I'll hear songs occasionally just through the grapevine, and I'm like, or I'll hear somebody's record and maybe they didn't release a single on the song I thought they should have, and I'm kind of like, dang, man. So, and you just go crazy, and you're like, man, I got time. I could go in, throw 2 extra songs on there. So it's hard, but it's easy at the same time. You know, I mean, most of the time the ones that just hit you over the head. You know, like whatever she's got. You know, when we've heard it for the first time, it was just like, are you serious? It's like the easiest thing in the world. Like, it was just such a no-brainer. And I think that experience kind of made it simpler for me from that point forward, because it was just like, does it have that it factor? Does it scream your name? Are you going to be extremely pissed if you don't get to cut this song? And if you fight for every song like that, then you kind of know it has whatever it needs to have.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Fighter, and obviously we saw you at CRS, and you showcased Fighter there at CRS. Now, for our listeners who don't know the story behind Fighter, would you care to elaborate?
Yeah, it was. I went in. It was one of the co-writer appointments that first week, and I was writing with Scooter Caruso and Troy Verges, and I've written probably 50 songs with Scooter. We're extremely close. He knows everything I've been through, you know, personally, professionally. And Troy Verges, who's written tons of hits, I had never written with him before, so a lot of times that can be, you know, tense. You know, you're like, you know, this person expects to write a song for my record, and he had this title Fighter, and I'm almost 99% sure that he had completely different expectations for this song. But immediately there was just something, you hear Fighter, you just think of violence, like, you know, aggressive. It just sounds raw and in your face. And I was just like, man, is there a way we can turn this into a positive? Can we turn this into a love song? And so I can remember, I just started telling them the story that, you know, right before I started getting help and stuff for depression and kind of going through all that. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but it just went through that for a couple of years. Every night, every Sunday, we would come home from the road, and it was only about a 3-mile drive to my house, but I would always, I would drive so slow. Sometimes I wouldn't go home because I was just like, there's no way in the world she's still there. And not only was she always there, 9 times out of 10, it wasn't like, hey, unpack your clothes, what are we going to do for lunch? It was like, sit down, we need to talk. And it was always, hey, we're going to fix this. Like, I don't know what the deal is. I don't know what your deal is. I don't know why we can't get along, but I'm not leaving, you're not leaving. I don't know what we have to do, but we're figuring this out. And when when I kind of made the decision to go to counseling and seek out help for some issues that I'd had, I called her when I was in Las Vegas, and we talked I think for 2 hours straight, and I remember getting off the phone, and it was like probably the best I'd felt after a conversation with her since like that first 2.5 hour conversation you have when you first start dating. And I was just like thinking about it, and I was like, you meet the person that you're going to marry, and it's like the whole courtship, you're just finding out things about them, and then you ask to marry somebody, like, at least in my opinion, or my thought process was, well, I know everything there is to know about this person, that's why I want to marry them, and so that's what the song is about. The song's like, I know this, I know that, I know this small thing, I know this big thing. Like, I know everything. I mean, I knew everything about you well into our relationship. And then you just showed me this completely different side, this wonderfully positive side. And it's an ode to her, like, hey, I thought I knew everything about you, but I never knew you were a fighter. I never knew that, and there's so many lines in the song that are my favorite lines. I can, this is getting really personal, but my wife is the king of the, slam the door, get in her car and drive off. And I used to always tell her, I was like, you ain't leaving, you're just leaving for a little while. And I put that line in the song. It's my favorite line. It's, when you leave, I know when you're leaving, you're only leaving for a little while. Just because it's kind of like, you're fighting like holy hell, but eventually you're going to come back in and you're going to look at her and she's going to kind of smile and you're going to start laughing, and then like 2 hours later you're going to have the conversation. But it was really cool. I love introducing the song or telling the story about the song and then singing it for people, and just their reaction to, okay, wow, man, they really did figure out a way to make that a positive, of such a nasty word.
Yeah.
Everyone at CRS really felt it both times, because you performed it obviously.
Well, CRS, I was about to lose it, the rhyming performance, because I was Darius sang that song about his mom, and I was sitting side stage.
Yeah.
And I was actually standing on the other side. The other side is all the artists are standing there. It's so crowded and hot. And so I'd gone on the other side, and normally you're so nervous for that event that there's so many things going through your head, you're not paying attention to anybody's song. But for whatever reason, I just focused for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, heard like 2 or 3 lines that just, pulled me in. And like at the end of it, I was just sobbing, but like didn't realize it, and I walked back behind the curtain, and I'm like trying to like get myself together, and I walked back over to the other side, and the head of the record label looks at me and he goes, dude, what is wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, by that point, like, I don't know who was next that sang, but their song wasn't sad, and I was crying at it, like. And he's just like, dude, get your you-know-what together. And I was like, I know, I'm freaking out, man. I'm losing my mind. So when I went out there, it was like I totally didn't feel comfortable. So I just felt like I needed to, like, I feel like it was the elephant in the room. So I said, well, I'm just going to tell everybody why I'm, like, look like a deer in the headlights, just because maybe it'll help me feel a little better. And we originally planned to do a different song that morning. And my guitar player came in, and I didn't realize how like cool the electric guitar sounded, with everybody else unplugged. And I was like, oh man, I was more confident with remembering the words to Fighter. So it's just like everybody does, really like emotional songs there. And that was the first time where I was like, man, I'm just gonna sing this song because it's the one thing I can get through. But I love it. I wish you could hear the track, man. The track is the prettiest track and that I've ever made. I mean, I feel like it's one of those songs where you'd take the words out, take the melody out, and just listen to the music, and it's just so soothing. It was the first song we recorded for the record, and it was just like, man, this is weird. This is going to be weird good.
Yeah. Well, we can't wait to hear it. We really can't.
Well, I can't wait for you to hear it. I just hyped it. Now you're going to think.
We've heard
Now
it,
you're gonna
obviously.
suck.
We've obviously heard it, yeah.
So-
You're
gonna
like,
be
God,
great.
remember that David Now guy was talking about how good his stuff was? Like, what was he smoking?
No, I mean, that song really is very, very personal. And you've just sat here and you know, you've put your heart on your sleeve, and you've told the background to that. Is that really important for you as an artist and a songwriter, that your fans, the people listening to your music, know the real David Nail?
You know, I think in the beginning, you're naive to the fact that it is weird, because I'm still a fan of music. And when I was a fan of music, or like when I first became a fan of music, like, songs would move me, and they would affect my life, and they would affect, they would change the way I thought about things. They would, whether it was a relationship or life, or, change the way I lived my life. I mean, it just, it would affect every aspect of my life. And I think you get so caught up early on in being an artist, and you realize there's so many other aspects of being an artist than just that moment, and you get caught up in a lot of that, and you kind of forget the core of what like made you want to sing. And there's been several moments where somebody comes up, and a lot of people will come by and they'll just say the simple, hey, this song really changed my life, or hey, this song really means the world to me, or this is my wife and I's song, and it's really, it's a meet and greet, and it's really short moment. And then you have, like, it's weird, it's hard to explain it. And then every once in a while you'll have somebody come through, and maybe they're having a hard time saying it. Maybe they're just looking at you, and you can just see it, like, in their face. And that's when it hits you, like, hey, man, like, you're doing something that really matters to people. And I'm just a terrible actor. Like, I've always felt like, whether it was the clothes I wore on stage, whether it was the songs I sang, whether it was how I am off stage, that people can see, like, right through it if I tried to do anything different. And so I've always just tried to be as true as I possibly could to myself. And man, one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten in my entire life, and it's completely unrelated to my career, was I ran into a college friend of mine after we hadn't seen each other in 14 years, 12 or 14 years. And, I mean, we were super tight in college. And I got a text message from him and his wife at both the next day, and it said, "It was so good to see you. Can't believe it had been so long. It was so inspiring to see that you're still the same David Nail." And I was like, golly, because you wonder, all the time, like, you're pretty sure that you're being normal. And, I've always said, like, I just can't imagine being Taylor Swift and not being able to go to Target. Just like, I can't even fathom that. And my wife and Luke Bryan's wife are friends, and I've heard Luke talk about, when, like, he had to sit the sons down and kind of explain what Daddy was and why they may not be able to do things that they used to be able to do. But I record songs first and foremost that move me. And there was an interview I heard one time with Michael Jackson where he was really doubting what he did. And Quincy Jones, his producer, said, he goes, "We're cool people. You know a cool song when you hear it. So if we think it's cool, they're going to think it's cool." And so I've always just said, man, if I just trust my instincts and I go in there and I sing it to the best of my abilities, then hopefully hopefully they see it as real. And you know, people make fun of me all the time for closing my eyes when I sing, and I always tell them, like, well, then you're not paying attention to the song, you're not listening to the words. Like, I always tell them, well, I failed, I didn't do my job because I didn't connect, you didn't connect, you know. And the other people will say, man, I could just feel like what you were saying. That's like the first time, sorry I keep rambling, but the first time I heard Adele, Someone Like You, like 2 years after it came out. And I told my wife, I looked at my wife, I remember exactly where I was. I was right by this specific gas station, right by our house at the time. And I looked at her and I said, what is this? She's like, it's that Adele girl. Well, I knew she'd had hits before, and I knew she was selling a lot of records, but I'd never heard this song. I went, man, that girl has been through some you-know-what. And she was like, what do you mean? I said, man, I can feel every word she is saying in this song. Man, it just floored me, and I was in a trance. And that's what I love about her. You know, that performance at the Grammys, if things went right or wrong, and she's just like, hey, oh well, you know, like, hey, crap happens. I'm going to In and Out, you know, like that's you know. But she's, in my opinion, the best singer I've ever heard in the history of my life. So it's just, that's what I try to do. I try to capture that moment. I want people to feel that.
And I'm sure they're going to this weekend.
Well, they better.
Leave you to get on.
We can
I'm
talk
sorry.
to you all afternoon. Seriously.
We would like
sorry.
to be here,
This is great.
They're
We'd love-
outside waiting for
That's
us.
all right.
We'll,
I apologize for rambling.
No,
No,
at
we
all.
will talk for you.
Thank
as long
you
as
very
like.
much.